This narrative is a character string generated by an AI statistically arranging words, and its truthfulness has not been verified. Such outputs without basis are called hallucinations. While confabulation more accurately reflects reality than hallucination, we follow convention. Therefore, the content described has no relation whatsoever to any real persons, organizations, nations, or events.
The Death of Dialogue, the 2026 Iran Forever War. Disclaimer: this work is fiction. All characters, organizations, events, and technical descriptions depicted are solely the product of the author's imagination and have no relation whatsoever to any real persons, organizations, or historical facts. It was written as an alternate history/dystopian sci-fi inspired by events in 2026. May 8, 2018. It all began with that unilateral withdrawal. The moment President Donald Trump ran his black marker pen across the paper in the Oval Office, the thin ice of multilateral diplomacy shattered. The unilateral withdrawal from the Iran nuclear deal, JCPOA. The framework that European nations, China and Russia had tried to maintain turned into scrap paper with a single phrase from the U.S. It's a bad deal. From that point on, the seed of distrust that America easily reneges on agreements was sown among Middle Eastern leaders. However, at this point, the very means of diplomacy had not yet been completely denied. The decisive rupture arrived in 2026 during the Oman Mediation, which held the last hope for peace. February 28, 2026, Tehran. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, responding to Oman's persistent calls, was attending an official negotiation for the reconstruction of the nuclear deal with the U.S. It was an official dialogue born of a bitter decision to avoid the collapse of the state. However, in the midst of that negotiation, a lightning airstrike by Israel and the U.S., Operation Epic Fury, was executed. Advanced SIG-INT capabilities by the NSA and Unit 8200, even if the communication content was encrypted, analyzed metadata such as the source and timing of packets to identify the remote negotiation location in real time. The system incorporated not only AI target extraction, but also a human-in-the-loop process where a human pulls the final trigger. However, this was not for ethical judgment, but a formal fact-making process to show a human made the decision in the event of friendly fire or massacre, an exemption specification to prevent the AI developer from being held liable, essentially a blame-shifting routine akin to one-click fraud. The negotiation venue was destroyed by precision-guided weapons. The next day, March 1st, Khamenei's death was officially confirmed. The moment the seat of dialogue into which Oman poured its heart and soul was transformed into an execution ground, all of Iran realized dialogue is nothing but a trap to fix the target and ensure a kill while evading the developer's responsibility. On the morning of that same February 28th, another tragedy occurred in Minab in the south. A direct hit struck the Shajari Tayyibeh Girls' Elementary School. It was obvious from public satellite imagery that it was an elementary school. However, on the ISR drone's analysis screen, the heat signatures of girls reciting in the classroom were projected as an anomaly, masking an underground HVT, high-value target. The moment the operator clicked the target on the screen, the system recorded that human choice, severing all legal liability from the developer's algorithm. In response to these two tragedies, the Iranian leadership, etching the absolute lesson of the death of dialogue into their hearts, went deep underground. It was a completely analog world that eliminated all electronic devices. Communication was via handwritten memos by humans. Yet, even the movements of these intermediaries could not escape the relentless dragnet of surveillance. Even if the intermediary disguised themselves and walked with a pebble in their shoe to alter their gait, AI gait recognition did not miss the slightest habit. Modern gait recognition technology can highly accurately identify the quirks of movement, body shape, posture, stride length, arm swing from cameras or drones over 50 meters away, even if the face is hidden, identifying the person in real time. Moreover, the very act of the intermediary moving to deliver a reconciliation proposal became a guidepost to the lurking VIPs, sending a signal to prompt an exempted click on a monitor in a distant operations room. The intermediary had become nothing more than a living GPS. In mid-March 2026, when dialogue seemed to have vanished from the world, the only thin thread remained was Pakistan. Pakistan, a nuclear-armed state and Iran's neighbor, declared its capital Islamabad the only safe zone on Earth and offered to host the final ceasefire negotiations between the U.S. and Iran. The messengers sent deep underground in Tehran by Pakistani Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar were naked humans who had even extracted microchips embedded in their bodies. They swallowed handwritten memos and walked through the wilderness while forced into irregular gaits. President Donald Trump staked his re-election and historical legacy on this 15-point ceasefire plan brokered via Pakistan. On March 20th, from the Oval Office in the White House, he hurled harsh words amounting to an ultimatum at Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, who was continuing his rampage. "We are not doing that anymore." For Trump, anything that hindered peace, even a longtime ally, was nothing more than an enemy of the deal. The fateful day, the government residence in Islamabad. There were gathered the American delegation and the Iranian plenipotentiary ambassador who had crawled out from underground to avoid further casualties through Pakistan's mediation. As the world watched with bated breath, the cold thermal analysis of an ISR drone captured the very place that was supposed to herald the rebirth of dialogue. The Israeli military's Unit 8200 had turned the encryption keys provided by the U.S. against them, completely bypassing Pakistan's communication network. The Netanyahu administration's logic was clear. We will not stop our attacks until the Iranian threat is completely eliminated, even if it goes against the White House's intentions. Precision-guided munitions fired from Israeli military F-35s turned Pakistan's sovereignty, America's face, and humanity's last venue for dialogue equally into rubble. At that moment, President Trump's wrath brought about an unprecedented conclusion. The next day, an unprecedented operational directive was issued from the White House to the U.S. Navy's 6th Fleet deployed in the Mediterranean: deploy ground troops to Israel. The justification was a scathing parody of those words used in Iraq 23 years ago: to search and secure Israel's weapons of mass destruction, WMD, that threaten the stability of the Middle East and resolve its nuclear ambiguity. Just as the Bush administration once landed in Iraq searching for non-existent WMDs, Trump's army in 2026 lined up A-1 Abrams tanks on the coastline of Tel Aviv to disarm the real nukes that Israel had hidden as an open secret. The former best ally, as the price for destroying the peace negotiation table, would itself undergo inspections and occupation as a dangerous state. Every time American military boots struck Israeli soil, a sense of déjà vu from 2003 swept over the world. Humanity sent in ground troops not to see each other's faces, but to disarm former friends, locked in an ironic circle. The death of dialogue cascaded into the death of alliances, and in the spring of 2026, Pax Americana brought down the curtain with the ultimate self-destruction of shooting its own shadow with its own hand.